511 hoses. Almost all components of the fuel system are fixed and hard mounted, with the exception of our hoses commonly used in the connection source of the fuel supplies to the fuel facility customer. Because of the flexible construction, the hoses are subject to the damage not seen into other fuel system components. Since hoses are often used in environmental sensitive areas, the damage can be lead to leaks and are not bounded to bring unwanted attention to the facility and function. And greater care must be exercised maintaining the hoses. 511 scope. The section provides general background information on hoses, petroleum services, shore basin facilities described in common organizational level maintenance troubleshooting associated with the hose. It is intended to be used in conjunction with detailed technical information contained with the manual operation instruction. Additional information pertaining to petroleum hoses used in the maintenance can be found in the following references: Military Handbook 201B and the Petroleum Operations Military Handbook 1022, Petroleum Facilities, Navy Air 065502, Aircraft Refueling Facilities, Mil Spec and Mil T 83973, Hydrant Hoses. 511.2 General Maintenance Requirements. Most of the maintenance hose results in physical damage during the petroleum hoses. The following guidance is recommendation. 511.2.1 The inspection techniques. Visual survey of the hose. Observe the hose in general condition. The liquid look for the fluid of the hose. Puddles, fine mist of the physical damage such as jack abrasion, deformation, deteriorated joint sensitive in the smell. Detected petroleum vapor. The look of the improper hoses, handling of the overstress. The hose is stretching, relative movement of the kinking mark, the location of the suspected damage. The later inspection. The remove of the hoses from the surface as soon as possible. 511.2 The common inspection points of the following items should be included in the inspection procedures of the hoses. Other than outer jacket inspection, the outer jacket from the cuts of the gouges, tears, or abrasions, bulges, or blisters, and chemical damages, cracks that could be caused by exposure from the sun, spots, tears, cuts, and down to go through the reinforcement of the patch cut and covered. Carcass. The carcass comprise miles and layers of the hose between the jacket and cover interior lining, and the carcass contains a wire fiber reinforcement. The hose is in strength. The jacket intact. The carcass not visible, but kinks and flat spots, bulges indicates the carcass has been damaged. Mark any such defects as be observed. Nipple flanges. Nipple flanges should be examined by simple and leaks. It is slipping in at the joint of the hose and crack. So similar defects. Interior lining. When wipe the inside of this clean swab cloth to finding signs and deterioration. Visual inspect and lining flashpoint or flashlight. Visually inspect the lining with a flashlight as far as from one end of this. Each end is possible. Hose markings. Marking indicating manufacturer class of service, last data. The tested safing work pressure shall be invisible. Their absence is an indication of excessive wear or abuse should alert to the personnel to other problems. 511.2.3 The causes of hose damage. Most petroleum hoses are designed to absorb heavy use. However, careless use of abuse contribute to the premature failure. Improper hose service application. Use only hose specifically manufactured for oil services marked in those hoses were classified Class 1 Rubber Manufacturer Association RMA. The satisfactory of petroleum fuels, including gasoline or aromatic content of the 30% of the less aromatic gasoline solvents required. The RM Class 2 and 3 of the hose abrasions. Avoided damage to the other outer jacket caused by dragging of the house across the piers, docks, and pavement, and the lift of the hose for the crane and carrying out the dollies and rollers. Kink and crushing. Most of the use oil suction and the discharge of OS and D in the hose, metal wire, and reinforcement in the carcass. Reinforcement permanently deformed, broken in the hose, and kink crushed. And never lift the hose in the middle of the end of the hanging damage. Sliding ham damage because of their weight and houses that may suffering exterior damage in the single rope sliding, use of the belt sliding saddles and brittles, protecting the hose and pieces of the old house and wooden canvas. Over pressure in houses can be damaged. Internal pressure is excessive for the design pressure. Standard in hoses designed for the working pressure of the 150 psi, 600 psi minimum bursting pressure. Most transfer pumps do not develop in more than 100 psi. At the hose, the shock waves and might be caused by the quick closing of the valves. It could close in much higher surge pressures. This problem remove the quick closing and visual install surge pressure if normal system operating sorry, thinking about 9/11. Develop more than 100 psi at the hose, and both shock waves which might be caused by quick closing valves could cause by higher surge pressures, and the problem removes the quick closing valves and installing surge suppressors. If normal operating procedures marginally close the hose and working design procedures, initial pressure relief valves overpressure is not normally a problem of the aircraft refueling hose because of the low pressure limitations of the aircraft fueling systems. In the 110th Congress, the 9/11 Commission Acts for CFDA and agencies and state infrastructure loans for implementations. When ship movement is sufficient slack must be provided to hose supporting gear to allow the rise and falls and ships that loaded unloads the ranges of tide and the fore after side movements of the ship due to changes the wide and current of the way rates of the passing vessels. Deterioration when not in use. Many hoses spend more than service life is stowed in a condition that is an actual stowed use should be laid and uniformly supported and should be protected in the sun weather than drained completely flushed out of the fresh water before stored. Physical damage, excessive pull of the hose can be damaged to actions and may moving vehicle aircraft within the hose connection. 511.2.4 hose testing. The following tested procedures existing housing. The hosing and the testing. The following and the test procedures existing hose suggested by the RMA. Test fluid may be water, liquid petroleum, flash point of 110 degrees Fahrenheit or more. Kerosene, JP5 or number 2 burner fuel is accepted but gasoline, JP4 and air should be not used. The petroleum is used in the test medium. The test should be not conducted in a place with contamination adjacent to the water. This will not occur in their slippage. Provide blind flanges, nipples, valves, pressure gauges, pumps, and appropriate sizes and rating for the testing to be performed. Lay the hose out of flat, straight, and uniformly supported. Fill the hose and test fluid. Expel the air. All air raises the pressure to the PSIGs. Hold the pressure in at least 5 minutes during the interval. Pressure. Measure the length of the hose and the end of the rubber. The end of the rubber to end of the rubber. Record the measured length of the original length. And if the hose is maintaining 10 PSIGs, raises the pressure to 1.5 times the rated working pressure of the system and hold for 15 minutes at the time. Examining the hose for fittings and leakage, bulges, distortions, other signs of weakness. Again, measure the length and described above and record the measurements to test measure pressure length and calculating elongating percentages of original length versus testing pressure length and new hoses and maximum allowable test elongation for the new hose is 75%. If the testing elongation of the used hose exceeds twice the amount of 0.15%, the indication of there is seriously internal weakness or the hose should be retired. In 511 tanker barges and hoses, while in hoses, I cannot mean to stress what is sin and trigonometry. 511.3 tanker barges and hoses. The houses known as the oil suction discharge OSD hoses. In general, heavy construction flange couplings and reinforced hose bodies. Relatively high weight of the per foot makes it susceptible to mechanical damages, leakage of improper handling as a result. And following requirements are set. 511.3.1 maintenance requirements, Coast Guard oil pollution regulations, otherwise known as 33 CFR Part 151 to the Part 156, requires oil to transfer the hoses into diameter more than 3 inches be tested, inspected annually. Proper testing research of the housing, not burst, bulge, leak, or abnormal distortion under static liquid pressure at the least rated relief valve setting of the maximum pressure when new relief valve is installed plus the static head pressure of the system is in which the house is used. The visual inspection requirement states that the house should have no loose covers, kinks, bulges, soft spots, and have no gouges, cuts, slashes, or penetrate the hose of reinforcement, and that is no external into the internal inspection is possible within both ends of the opening. Internal deterioration. 511.3.2 the critical hose replacement. The replacement of the OSD, the oil suction discharge hose, is a matter of determined experience judgment. However, in the following conditions would be indicating the hose should be removed and from the service. It fails the pressure testing exceeds and approaches the allowable pressure test elongation. The jacket is cut, worn, torn, etc., and to be pointed, the reinforcement is exposed. The hose is linked and crushed into the point that a minor outside of the diameter, that the smallest diameter at the point of the damage is 30% less than normal. There is serious crazing and cracking in the jacket due to the sunlight exposure. Large pieces of interior lining are separating, blistered, and the house is generally stiff and dried out. And bending tested reveals the reinforcement exposed and deteriorated. 51133, the housing markings after pressure testing and prior to the use, ensuring the OSD's housing and stencils are otherwise permanently marked and indicated manufacturer trademark identification. Rated working pressure class of services as follows: Class 1 oil and gasoline up to including 30% of the aromatic content. This Class 2 the gasoline up to including 50% of the aromatic content, such as needed low leaded high octane gasoline. Pressure Class 3, 100% aromatic solvents such as xylene and toluene. Pressure dated the last hydraulics test. In 511.4, the underwater hoses must have working pressure of 225 psi more than suction vacuum of 20 inches measure 20 inches of mercury. The similar construction of the OSD inches have been an additional chaff and gearing covering some sections of hoses. External reinforcement may be used as added to prevent kinking and due to tidal motion, which in the used in oil transfer services and offshoring moorings experiences has shown that some section of the underwater hose is consisting rarely more than others in housing life is extended, periodically changing the position. Individual sections of the hose string and ensuring the proper stainless steel bolts and mono nuts are used and reassemble the string. U.S. Coast Guard regards the stated 33 CFR Part 156 and underwater hose are tested every 2 years. It is recommended when equipment available for lift buoys, anchors, chains, and offshore mount mooring equipment, and an effort to be made and schedule hose inspection testing and currently, regardless of the duration since the last test, work of the mooring system that can cause additional strain of the wearing on the hoses. 511.5 tank, truck, and tanker car hoses. The hoses are similar to construction to those of the tanker and barge services, though the housing attached to the tanker truck and the tanker car should be equipped with a dry braking coupling and a nozzle. Since these houses are subject to the physical environment and condition of the OSD hoses, the recommendation that they have been inspected, tested annually, prescribed in the section that hose sheds and racks usually provide in loading unloading facilities, that they should be protected and extend the life of the air hose. 511.6 the aircraft fueling hose. The other classes of the hose that described in section deliver products whose purity is not assured to the finally maintained is no true to the aircraft fuel housing. The fuel flowing in the housing may be already to be filtered to metered, intended for engines not tolerant to the fuel contaminant and save arrival of the aircraft is dependent on the fuel delivered through these hoses. In addition to the subjects of the environmental, the physical hazard of the OSD are lighter construction than the factors combined the causing aircraft fueling housing to be major maintenance concern. 511.61 causing premature failure to the addition previously stated modes of the failure of consideration to overpressure. Most aircraft fueling system limited the pressure far below working pressure of the fuel housing. However, the thermal expansion is closed may be excessive pressure if relief valves are not present. Improper storage when possible. Aircraft of the fuel house should be protected against the contingent exposure to the sun and weather. Hose should not that is not current, which should be hose that is not current use should be drained, flushed, and laid flat in a cool, dark location, large and loose and uniformly supported coils. Abrasement and pavement. Aircraft fuel hosing continual use of can be repeated dragging across abrasive pavements and fueling areas. The scars and sources of the outer jacket allowing moisture of the reinforcement fabric to result in eventual fabric rot. 511.62 the inspection testing criteria of Navy Air 0605502 states that hose should be thoroughly inspected in the entire length, with special emphasis closing and nozzle near the connection to the opposite end of the hose should be pressed in the entire circumference and attached for softened spots by alternate blisters and wet spots exposed to the hose and reinforcement material and causing the hose replacement because of the exposed fabric providing a source of water to enter and migrate. Ultimately, rot the fabric, inspect the area and around the housing end of the couplage slippage and evidence of the misalignment, hose and couplings, and or scored or exposure areas. Pressure and testing of the hose above 100 psi is 1.5 the times normal pressure and recommended because of such practice actually weaken the hose and because subsequent ruptures during the aircraft fueling operations. Additional operations should instructed the examination of hose assemblies for leaks, defects during each use and take corrective actions appropriate for the conditions observed. Current the Navy Air criteria approved provided accomplishment and detail the preventive maintenance checklist on a daily basis more often than determined necessary of the local base of the hose. Pressure testing is performed daily using a fill hose used in full pump pressure. Periodic pressure testing is typically discussed earlier in the section should be scheduled directed for the fuel management officer. 51163 criteria of the house hose replacement of the criteria for the replacement of the aircraft fuel hose are similar to the outline tanker and the barge hose. The house should be replaced in single bubbles and weeping of its outer cover and the worn away sufficient to the expose of the fabric. Important addition consideration is an ineffective deterioration interior liner that can defect in particles of the rubber strainer screens that may cause the contaminant of the fuel. Any hose of the condition is suspected should be immediately replaced. 51164 preparation the use of new or out of service hose Navy Air 0606502. The details of the details of the hose pickling process are using the base of new hose the service return of the one use of after the extended period of layup. Basically, the goal of pickling is remove plastic zeers, talc, and mica from the house of reducing the gum particulates transported for the fuel, and even in the new house should thoroughly inspected because of the inspection pickling process. The hoses will be not available for the use of minimum 4 days after the receipt. 512 landscaping, dikes and mounds.